And welcome in to another episode of Too Many Points on the Tell Me More podcast. I'm your host, Mac Moore, here again with Justin Pemberton. How's it going, Justin?
Mac, not too bad, man. Just another day. And of course, we're just one day closer to the big game. Get to watch our beloved Chiefs hopefully repeat, be the first team to do that since the 03-04 Patriots. And of course, as you can see, I'm rocking some new gear I got on Saturday going to good old Rally House, and that was a good time just to look for some new Chiefs gear and have some stuff to wear possibly for the big game on Sunday.
That's fair. I got a rule in my family. We don't buy new gear until after the game. I think it was either the 02 or 03 KU Jayhawks going to the Final Four. They went both times, but I can't remember.
It was
the first time and the second time.
It was the 02 season, but it was in March or April of 03.
Well, but they went 2 years in a row because they lost to Maryland and then the next year faced Syracuse and lost. Because I think it was the second year because I remember being already very angry at Drew Gooden. My anger at Drew Gooden had passed because he left early and was like, well, how are we going to get back? And they made it back, but did not beat Syracuse, and I still hate Syracuse and Carmelo Anthony to this day. But we bought like leather KU jackets and like shirts and everything, and we're poor. We almost never get to buy memorabilia. We never get to buy anything good. So to have that, it was like a big purchase, and they lose, and it's like, okay, let's wait until they win. Let's make sure there's a championship before we start buying stuff. So yeah, that's my rule. I'm still wearing the shirt I have for the Chiefs. The only one I really wear is one I got to go to the home opener, the Patrick Mahomes first year starting. So I believe, or it was the 49ers game where Jimmy Garoppolo blows out his knee. So I had that shirt and I wore it again. I didn't even wear it another time until the Chiefs make it to the Super Bowl last year. That was my shirt to, make Jimmy Garoppolo blow out his knee again. But it just good luck to have the Chiefs beat the 49ers one more time. So I've wore that shirt through two 49ers wins, one being the big one. So that's my lucky Chiefs shirt, and no reason for me to go out and buy any more gear until they win another championship. So that's the game plan. But yeah, it's exciting. I'm looking forward to it. I think for me, I forgot the Pro Bowl existed. Like they kept doing years where they pushed it out past the Super Bowl, and obviously that didn't work because everybody's like, "No, we're done, man. We don't need this."
It should have stayed there. I think it's ridiculous that the NFL has pushed the Pro Bowl before, because the players on the teams that are in the Super Bowl don't get to play in the Pro Bowl, and I know the Pro Bowl has become like the NBA All-Star game. It's a joke where no one tries, no one plays hard or anything, but still, it's an honor to play in the Pro Bowl. And for those that are going to be in the big game that don't get to be in the Pro Bowl, I think that's a joke. And I think personally, if you add those players from those teams, maybe the overall content of the Pro Bowl is maybe better, and just get it back to where it was before, where it's after the Super Bowl.
That's the thing, though. Like, that was the new thing. Like, it used to be before the Super Bowl. After the Super Bowl,
it was after.
They did that in the last, 10 years, man. Like, they made that change. And you know what happens is nobody shows up anyways. So the Super Bowl guys, like, the idea that because they're in the Super Bowl, that, like, we need those players, they're the top players, they didn't show up. Like, they started doing it after, and they're like, "Nah, we're good. We don't want to do this." And now just nobody cared all that much to begin with, and now they're out of the habit of watching it.
Wait, so
it used to be
in the early years of the Pro Bowl, which I think didn't it start in the 70s? I think late 70s, early 80s, maybe. So you're saying it was before the Super Bowl and then they went to after it. Now they,
pretty sure. And so this is like one of their first years of going back to having it in the middle. Not a good idea. None of it's a good idea. Like, here's the thing, and you mentioned the NBA All-Star. and the idea they don't try. Well, one, that's been broken this year because they did the Elam ending for the All-Star Weekend this last year, and it was phenomenal. Honestly, once again, I've made the argument on a few podcasts. The Elam ending is how every basketball game should end. It makes it more exciting. You don't get stupid fouls at the end. You don't have you have two teams constantly trying to score rather than one team with the lead holding on for dear life, which isn't good. It just is not. It does not make for good basketball. Elam ending is great and made the NBA like they tried every second. They fought, and there was an exciting ending that fans went away happy. NFL, the problem is not about players trying. The ones who show up, the ones who are there, they love hitting people. They're not allowed to hit people. They're not allowed to blitz. They like all the rule changes, which makes sense. They're all to make it safe. It also makes it impossible to make a product that's good or that makes those players do anything other than, all right, like the wide receivers shell out, quarterback shell out, but nobody else. What is their incentive to do anything in that game? What would make the Pro Bowl exciting again? Having players like Sean Taylor, rest in peace, murder a punter.
Yes.
We also can't have Pro Bowls where Sean Taylor, rest in peace, player safeties are allowed to murder punters on plays. Like, can't have it. Like, it is a bad thing that you're going to give them head injuries in a game that doesn't matter. So it's a no-win situation. You can't do it.
Man, I mean, that is, when you think of Pro Bowl, that is the highlight of all time. And I'll never forget watching it on CBS. It was incredible.
You know who will forget watching it? The punter. Right. So it makes sense to not do it. It also just there's not a way to make it really work. And at best, you can just scrap the game format for more of the skills challenges, make the actual game more of a 7-on-7 competition. And while that is not the Pro Bowl, it's not a football game in the way that you would want for the NFL. It's probably the best way to get something exciting. And honestly, the numbers don't agree with me. The numbers say that Pro Bowl game, even when it's diminishing ratings, it is more impactful than a skills competition. I watch the skills competitions, man. You get me some quarterbacks out there throwing balls through hoops while they're running around an obstacle course. Like, I'm in. I will watch it. And I swear to God, you put it on Nickelodeon, I'm pretty sure most of the people on Twitter will watch it too. That is the plan to save the Pro Bowl. That works. Everything else, you can try, but it's just not going to work. There's not an incentive. Their first one was they shouldn't have moved it out of Hawaii because that was at least the one thing that was the big incentive to make players show up rather than dropping out. And, all of a sudden, Kirk Cousins has, actually he's still not good enough to actually make it in the Pro Bowl, but somebody of Kirk Cousins level becomes that third quarterback because everybody else didn't want to be there. That happens so often, and there's not really a good way to stop it. But Hawaii was the closest, and now I don't even think they can go back. I don't think they can take the old format and say this works. I think, as I said earlier, people have got out of the habit of watching it. Also, I had WWE Royal Rumble pay-per-view on last night, so I was like, I built my day around that. I forgot the Pro Bowl existed. But most people aren't watching, and the players, I think the mirage is broken. I think they realize this isn't even worth the trip to Hawaii. I could buy that myself, So there's nothing left for the Pro Bowl. So doesn't matter. Didn't even put it into the rundown, but I'm glad we got to talk about it for a minute because it's kind of sad that I never thought that many people watched, but now it really does. I didn't know it happened. I got up on Twitter, saw two things. It was some sort of Pro Bowl stats, and I'm like, wait, what the hell is that? That was last night.
It was some celebration special that was televised on both ABC and ESPN. I watched it a little bit. It was, it's of course nothing compared to the actual content of a game or anything, but I don't know. They're just trying to do something to kind of give some recognition to those that made the Pro Bowl, which I understand, but I don't know when it gets to that kind of level where you're just doing some special. I don't know if you would really have the decency to really do it, but I get their logic, what they were trying to do, though.
Yeah, and there's, like I said, there's not really a way to fix it. I think there's stuff in the NBA. I've heard things the season's too long, so create a midseason tournament, and theoretically, the way the All-Star game is in February, MLB does it in the middle of the season. Like NFL can't even do that. It's not part of it is that they don't want to change the schedule. They want more games, not less. So they're not going to be like, let's build in a 2-week break in the middle of the season so people can go and be part of the Pro Bowl.
They want more of this.
But that's not even the reason they can't do it. There's not a way to incentivize a game that doesn't matter. Preseason has value. Like preseason gets players ready to go. It figures out who's those final players on your depth chart.
Although
you still can't get them to matter. It's still not possible.
You don't need 16 quarters of preseason ball.
No, you definitely don't need 4. You don't need 4 games, but they have a impact on the season where a Pro Bowl put in the middle would detract, and then anything at the end, like you said, whether it's the final, whether it's in between the Super Bowl and the conference championship games, or whether it's the week after, it just doesn't matter, man. There's not a way to incentivize it. There's not a way to make it where it's we're putting our bodies on the line for a game that doesn't matter. And in this case, some of the players would just shell out, and you have to stop them from doing that. You have to protect the players, particularly in this pickup game. The Pro Bowl just can't work. It never really worked. And now as what's the entertainment value? It really doesn't, other than, you get to celebrate the players. I'd rather them not have a game. I'd rather the Pro Bowl be kind of like an all NFL type team. You pick them, you send them there for, like I said, do 7-on-7s, do various skill competitions, and just get better people directing it. I feel like it's the same NFL people that don't really know what they're doing. They know how to put on an NFL game, but when they're trying to we do the same thing here because everybody loves NFL. It's but they love it because it matters. This doesn't matter. So the only way to do it, you have to be entertaining. You have to find cool ways to introduce the players, introduce, just stories. It should be closer to pregame than it is to any real game. And instead, they've built the entire production around looking like a normal NFL game, but it's not. It's just there's no way to do that. So we talked way longer about the Pro Bowl than I thought we would. But we want to talk about NFL coaches. We want to talk about the hirings that that game of musical chairs is over now. It usually gets that way at the end of the year. We had to see it play out a little bit differently this year because they changed the interviewing rules to allow a few to be interviewed earlier and then a cutoff to not distract coaches during the playoffs. But still, as teams started to fall out, you knew teams were going to fill up, which is also why I mentioned last week that one of the biggest enemies of Eric Bieniemy getting a job is the fact that his team doesn't lose in the playoffs anymore. So he's constantly in a game until there are no coaching spots left. And this year, there were a lot of coaching spots, and they went rather quickly. Running off the list real quick, started with Urban Meyer going to the Jacksonville Jaguars. That one was a big surprise, pulling him out of retirement. Obviously, there are health issues that concern with Urban Meyer, particularly, besides the fact that he's a college coach, that we know a lot of what it takes to be a college coach. Those skills don't translate to the NFL because you're not building a team through recruiting people to come. You're signing contracts. The GM's doing a lot of the team building. And even if you have those GM powers, it's not the same skill set that can help you build a good team. So there are questions there. There are questions with the health. There's also the fact that every time anything bad has happened in Urban Meyer's life, he has pointed to the health. Not that those things aren't real, but he's definitely used that as a crutch to avoid criticism at various points in time. So that should be interesting. Art Smith, Titans OC to the Atlanta Falcons. Robert Saleh, 49ers DC to New York Jets. Brandon Staley, Rams DC to San Diego. That's not an incorrect statement. I'm still just calling them the San Diego Chargers.
That's fair. I'm right there with you, man. I'm right there with you.
Nick Sirianni, Colts OC. We mentioned this one on the last podcast. Philadelphia Eagles fire Doug Peterson to hire his former offensive coordinator. And then the last opening was the Houston Texans. They end up grabbing, I don't have it in front of me right now. What's the guy's name? David
Cooley.
Yeah, David Cooley. So all that finished up, and that one will have implications for our next topic when we talk about a trade that happened and a trade that one player really badly wants to happen. But when you look at those coaching hires, what's the biggest thing that stands out for you? I mean, we originally, Eric Bieniemy was a big conversation point, mostly because of the fact that there are so few black coaches, so few, people of color who are head coaches in the NFL. There were hirings that Dave Cooley counts as that as I think Robert Saleh. So you have a few, but you're still I think it's still at 3 or 4 black head coaches in the NFL. And obviously at the end there was a little bit of pressure to have, the owners actually step up and make that happen instead of just saying, well, we went with the guy we like, because we've seen guys like Eric Bieniemy who have everything it takes and every excuse for why he hasn't been picked yet are all debunked by the other head coaching hires we watch. We watch guys who don't make play calls. We watch guys who aren't offensive coordinators. We watch guys who aren't even defensive coordinators. We watch stuff that is pretty crazy at this point to see and think that there's any valid excuse for why Eric Bieniemy wouldn't get picked. It's still strange to me that he's still out there, but I don't think it's as much of a, white owners keep picking only white head coaches now that there was a few more minority head coaching hires in this cycle, but still something to keep an eye on. And when you're looking at the rest of the guys, though, which one stands out to you the most as the most interesting head coaching hire?
Well, I'm going to first kind of go off on what you were saying about Urban Meyer. You were saying that it wasn't, or that it was a surprise to see him, go to the Jaguars. From jumping to the NFL standpoint, yes, it was. But as far as getting back into coaching, no, it's not. Because, I mean, you mentioned it before that in past years when he's, been hired at either Ohio State or Florida or et cetera, he's always had the health issues as his biggest issue that he points out. So that's why, to me, it's not surprising, because he loves coaching, and I think personally the whole health issue thing is just a complete cover up. I mean, he may have had.
He has documented health issues. The question is how they flare up so much every time. I don't know.
Right.
He has an offensive coordinator who has domestic violence issues that there's evidence that the team and himself may have covered up. The moment that happens and there's questions, then it's like, oh, my heart, or what? It's like, those are the moments I have headaches again. Like, that's when you start questioning it specifically. But he does have documented health issues.
No, and I'm sure he's had issues, and I know he has. But for every stop he's been at, I don't know. That's a little puzzling. But that's a huge hire for the Jaguars if indeed he is going to be successful. Of course, we'll wait and see. A lot of it will depend on who they get at quarterback as far as the draft goes, or do they even become a player in the free agent pool or a trade, which I don't think they're going to. I think they're going to be mainly through the draft. So we'll see if it's Trevor Lawrence or if it's
Trevor Lawrence.
Well, sure, but you never know. I know it's going to be most likely, but
it's always possible, and I think the big thing though is like, what's a surprise jump, like Patrick Mahomes, like him jumping up, getting picked 10th when he was pretty low down the draft boards, and then his combine numbers brought him into a first round grade. Like, when you looked at him though, there was a reason to be like, I think I would draft that kid, and you didn't, as much as we thought we knew. We were looking at some, the skill sets, thinking that would be great to have, right? But Justin Fields, as much as he showed people how good he could be by beating Trevor Lawrence at Clemson, there still isn't anything about his game that's like he's going to override that. There's going to be something that happens at the combine that makes a team be like, I need him more than anybody else. I guess the closest I got is that they did hire Urban Meyer, and he'd be a guy who we've seen him, he does better when his quarterbacks are mobile. The issue is Trevor Lawrence is mobile. So there's Justin Fields isn't just going to be like, well, I'm going to go with him because he fits a style of play that, Urban Meyer wants to have in Jacksonville. Trevor Lawrence will probably fit that style as well. So there's not a reason to think he'll get jumped. There's obviously there's always that chance that Baker Mayfield went number one, and that didn't have that would have been, I would say, probably more surprising than if Justin Fields jumped Trevor Lawrence. Except who was the other quarterback that year with Baker Mayfield?
I'm trying to remember that now. And that was what 17.
Yeah, it was the year after Patrick Mahomes, even though they're like the same age. Or actually, Baker's a year older because he had like the transfer year and played an extra year.
So it was 2018 actually. Okay.
Yeah. So whatever it is, there wasn't anybody that there wasn't a Trevor Lawrence. There wasn't somebody people were describing as an Andrew Luck generational talent. So for that to happen, I don't imagine it would happen. Although Justin Fields would make more sense in any other year to be a guy who would hop up and take that number one spot. So I pencil in Trevor Lawrence. They might as well have just like brought him into the facility the moment that the moment that Clemson got eliminated by Ohio State. He should have just gone straight to Jacksonville.
So here are some names: Josh Rosen, Lamar Jackson, and Sam Darnold.
Yeah, no. So like, as much as Sam Darnold was kind of a darling in that draft, Baker Mayfield wasn't projected to be number one, and him jumping up was still a surprise to me, but it seemed more plausible than Justin Fields going over Trevor Lawrence. Like, he might not, like, if I'm picking the two, if Justin Fields was in that draft, I go Justin Fields by a mile, and that's not like looking back at what those guys have performed, because Lamar Jackson would be the guy who's has an MVP season. But if I'm looking at just what I thought of those players as prospects heading into a draft, I'd go Justin Fields head and shoulders above all of those guys. And I still don't think he has any chance of leaping over Trevor Lawrence.
That's fair. And then, of course, I think the interview of all coaches so far has to go to Dan Campbell, the kneecaps. That was quite maybe to some it was entertaining, but to others it'd be just like, okay, who are you and what are you talking about? And it's just I guess, can we just say that, boy, the Lions know how to pick them, don't they? It's just, I don't know. That's a weird hire.
And that's one of the ones that if the Texans don't pick David Culley at the end, I think there is just all over ESPN this week is discussing the fact that there weren't enough minority hires, even when teams are seemingly picking random white coaches. Like, there's not a good reason for some of these guys. And you like, and over time, it's like, all right, so a lot of these guys deserve it. There's a lot of guys in the NFL who deserve it. The fact that the only guys being picked that deserve it are white coaches, and the criteria is ever changing, never matches up. And the reasons used to not hire guys like Eric Bieniemy is because, doesn't call plays. Well, once again, like, we've seen that. That's not been the deciding factor in some of these owners making these decisions. So of all of them, you really ripped into the Eagles going with Nick Sirianni. Honestly, I think it's the Lions. I think that's the worst pick. I think all the other ones I can argue a value for. And maybe Dan Campbell figures it out. I feel like he's going to probably have a similar situation to Freddie Kitchens in Cleveland. I feel like that's kind of what it's going to look like. But Nick Sirianni, like, at the very least, it's funny to be like the offensive coordinator of his former offensive coordinator, but that's a guy who Frank Reich got the very best out of Carson Wentz. You're going to get the offensive coordinator who's working with Frank Reich right now. Obviously, you can't get Frank Reich, and the other option is trading Carson Wentz to the Colts, so they have this player that maybe Frank Reich can fix.
Yeah,
if
please.
The Eagles are stuck with Carson Wentz, it kind of makes sense to go get Nick Sirianni. Although now you have had a quarterback who's had one really elite year. You won a Super Bowl with his backup and had two horrendous years, or at least one definitely horrendous year and one below average year. It's hard to say we need to make another head coaching hire. Like we fired a guy who his resume was actually pretty solid, all things considered, but it didn't end very well. And now we're going to replace him with a guy with a similar connection so we can salvage the quarterback. Like if Doug Peterson can't salvage that relationship, are you just thinking that one good year was like only Frank Reich and company and Frank Reich took all the geniuses with him? Because you're putting a lot of your eggs into one basket is what I'm saying.
This smells like Rich Kotite to me, who coached the Eagles. And this is like early mid 90s before, I think Ray Rhodes then coached the Eagles, and then it was Andy Reid. And of course, the rest is history on that. But Rich Kotite, unknown name, really never proved himself. And of course, went to the Jets. After that, it got worse for him. Of course, Jets most likely should have had the worst record in franchise history, but the 1996 record still stands alone as the lone worst record in Jets history. And that goes on the resume of one Rich Kotite. So I don't know. And maybe a lot of Eagles maybe feel the same way, that it just smells like Rich Kotite all over again. Some unknown name that's never going to really prove a thing. But you never know. Let's see how the quarterback situation goes in Philly, if Carson Wentz is able to work things out and bounce back, or if it's now the Jalen Hurts show. But that's a big giant mess in Philly. And I agree with you. I think the Dan Campbell hire is going to probably end up being the worst hire, but I don't know. That situation in Houston is pretty toxic as well. So
and I don't even know, like that could blow up to be the worst, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's the worst hire, because I'm willing to look at context and be like, all right, why did this coach fail? Well, he came to a team with a top 5 quarterback that they then had to trade because ownership is terrible. So when that happens, it's not like how bad they are the next few years is entirely on him, as opposed to the Lions have been a team that have been close to 500 minus getting a head coach that like got them trailing downwards. And it's extremely funny how much more time he got there than Jim Caldwell did, despite having a better record.
11-5 and 9-7 1 year. They had back-to-back. Was it back-to-back playoff years, or like 2 out of 3 years, something like that? I
think it was like 3 seasons, and 2 of them were playoffs. 1 was not, and that's when they let him go. And it was like a 7-9 year, I think. So, it's crazy. The thing with the Lions is you just got Jared Goff, which, as much as we'll talk about that in a minute about how good he is, what kind of player is, the reason why the Rams gave up so much it's crazy what happened with that trade. But that's a player. You have draft picks. You can figure it out, right? There's a way to make it through. And actually, if Jared Goff is good, you stole a good quarterback. You stole somebody that they can work with. If he's bad, like a lot of us suspect, he's going to very quickly give you low wins, better draft picks. All those draft picks that you got are going to skyrocket. You're not going to waste your money on other talent right now because Jared Goff is that money on the books. And the moment that he's no longer on the books, you can have made those picks with hopefully get a quarterback, hopefully get some other players to put around that quarterback. And all of a sudden, the money that once it frees up, that money can then go to free agent weapons to put around new quarterback you drafted who's on a rookie deal. It's actually the perfect scenario for a team. So it's actually kind of weird. I wouldn't expect the Lions to have done something so well. And I'm saying that I'm not criticizing the Rams, who I also think the idea makes a lot of sense. This is a positive trade for both teams. It's just, what do you do with it? If you screw up the picks when you get them, it doesn't mean a damn thing. For the Rams, you have not drafted a first-round talent in many years. And as we saw from the Patriots, who did a similar thing, it works until it doesn't. It works until the wheels fall off. And eventually, even when you got great guys like Bill Belichick, if you're not consistently drafting first-round picks so that one or two of them can break out and be a star, you start to get to where the Patriots were, where they had no offensive weapons around Tom Brady. Tom Brady leaves, and we saw what happened to the Patriots this year. But the Rams could be stuck in a very similar situation, particularly because Stafford is like 33, 34? Like he's getting up there.
Yeah, he's 33 years old.
So I'm almost jumping into that already. Let's slow down for 1 second because I do want to hit one more coaching hire at least. Besides the actually I want to hit two, but I'll hit one fast. Brandon Staley, Rams DC, San Diego. It'll matter who they get as an offensive coordinator, but I feel like that was the biggest mistake because if you have Justin Herbert, and we've seen how other teams have been successful with that type of player, you need to get a creative mind that's calling plays. And the most sure way to do that is to hire a head coach who calls plays and is good at it, or is good at is part of a really good offense like Eric Bieniemy is. Eric Bieniemy would have been perfect. The only negative for the job is that you have to convince a head coach you're good enough to bring Justin Herbert to beat Patrick Mahomes ever. Like, that's the scariest part of taking the San Diego job. Otherwise, it's a good spot. There's a lot of good pieces. You could have attracted a good offensive coordinator hire or a good head coaching hire that was a former offensive coordinator. Brandon Staley, hopefully he can do a lot of the stuff he did with the Rams defense and do it with the Chargers. We know they have the pieces there. They've been injured, and if they're healthy, you have a defense, you have an elite quarterback, and you have a team that nearly won games even as their head coach did everything to lose those games. So you just need to get a decent offensive coordinator. It's harder to do when you're not offering him a lot of money and the head coaching job. So I don't think that's a bad hire until you see who the offensive coordinator is and whether they can actually build a good system around Justin Herbert. But the one I really want to talk about is Art Smith going to the Falcons. But you seem to have a take on the Chargers hire. So I'll let you jump in before we talk about that move that interests me the most.
Yeah, I mean, did we just watch the same movie unfold with Anthony Lynn? Like, was he a defensive-minded guy or was he offense?
I think it was supposed to be offense. Like, it was crazy. Whatever it was like
it didn't seem like it to me because you saw the miscues over and over and over and over again. And yes, that a lot of that does fall on the injuries, as you talked about with the Chargers. And yeah, they've had a lot of those over the years. They always seem to be snake bitten by that. But
yeah, and he's a former running back who was a running backs coach and then became an offensive coordinator. So
interesting.
His main thing was, and that's the thing, he wasn't bad at building an offense necessarily. He was bad at game management, which Andy Reid used to be bad at game management. That's something you can fix. You can bring in the right guys to help you out. The question is whether they do that. And so it actually kind of makes sense. If you've already established an offense that's good, you have a defensive coordinator who can, be the head coach, can help make sure the defense is doing the best they can do. And if you bring in an offensive coordinator who, one, is as good or better at calling plays and building around a guy like Justin Herbert than Anthony Lynn was, you're in good shape. And then it's just about who's managing the game. I don't know. I wouldn't say that a defensive coordinator is necessarily worse at managing the game. It is strange how often they try to protect their defense by being like, we're going to punt here. We don't want the defense in a tough situation. Like, as a defensive coordinator, I would have thought you would have trusted your defense to be good enough to make a stop. But nope, they're scared to death. So it's strange to me. But, like, I would say that that's the big thing. Who's calling the plays? Who is making those decisions on, are we going on fourth down? Are we doing this? Or are we doing that? If they can get the right guy, I don't think it's a problem getting a defensive coordinator, particularly one that we did see do some crazy effective things with the Rams. It helps having Aaron Donald, but there were things that they were able to accomplish against really good teams that we've seen good defenses not do. This wasn't the best defense in the NFL numbers-wise. They were the best at the right times with being able to slow down or stop really good offenses. And that's something that is invaluable in the NFL level. Like, if you can find it, it's a good reason to get it, but it doesn't matter if you don't make sure the offense keeps rolling and getting better, because as good as they were moving the ball, they didn't score enough. They didn't do the right plays at the right times to to actually win games, you got to fix that. So that's the main thing. Get a good offensive coordinator. If you don't fix the offensive side of the ball, whatever Brandon Staley brings to the table won't matter.
Also, get a better special teams coach too. That special teams was bad this year. I mean, I go back to
a lot of that falls on the head coach as well, and it's all about managing a team, which Anthony Lynn was just not very good at. Which he could get better. I doubt it, but there were a lot of problems there.
I'm trying to remember now. Where did he go? He just got hired recently to be the offensive coordinator, I think, somewhere.
In fairness, it's not, like I said, not a bad idea because they were good. As long as there's a head coach above him who is not letting him make bad decisions. Anthony Lynn put together a pretty good offense for the Chargers, one that we thought wouldn't be good. We thought there was no way Justin Herbert could be this good this fast. So much of it was Justin Herbert, but they had the weapons. They were doing what they needed to do. They just messed up way too often in game management decisions, which is not it's something that a offensive coordinator like Anthony Lynn, if he's good at the rest of it, that deficiency doesn't have to show up on Sunday. So it's about the other pieces. Art Smith, though, is one who is pretty good. I don't know who, I guess blaming Mike Vrabel for the punts. So I'm not going to put that on Art Smith, the playoff punts that doomed the Tennessee Titans. But that was a huge hire because that was one, I thought he could go to the Chargers. I thought he, maybe Jacksonville would have went after to pair with a Trevor Lawrence, put with that top pick. There, other guys, Philly, you want to fix Carson Wentz. Art Smith fixed Ryan Tannehill, and Carson Wentz is pretty broken. I think he looks worse than Ryan Tannehill looked when he left down in Miami, but I think there's more pieces there. I think the ceiling was higher with Carson Wentz than it ever was with Ryan Tannehill. So if you're trying to do, how do we fix him? Art Smith seems like Art Smith could have gone anywhere. There were so many guys where you have a quarterback and you're like, does he work? Well, a guy like Sean McVay made Jared Goff get you to a Super Bowl, So you just need a capable talent, even if they're not a great quarterback, right? So he could go to a lot of places. Going to Atlanta, I'm not sure anymore whether Matt Ryan is a talented quarterback who's not a great quarterback, or he's a great quarterback who is never all that talented, and age has shown that that's the case. So now that little bit of drop in speed, where other guys, Tom Brady can make up for it, Aaron Rodgers, guys, as they're getting older, they can make for whatever agility they lose, whatever this or that. You can't do that when you're Matt Ryan and you are always playing above your pay grade.
Right.
And then, part of it's Julio Jones, not healthy, but some of Matt Ryan's best games were when Julio Jones wasn't.
You got no running game because you got to beat up aging Todd Gurley. And did we lose Mac there? Am I the only one talking now? It sounds like it. We'll give it a minute. Oh.
So I got to stop hand gesturing as much as I'm doing because I keep nicking the cable that knocked out the Ethernet again. So got to be careful. My last point was something. Get good offensive coordinators with good quarterbacks. You can make stuff happen. The main thing being Art Smith with Matt Ryan is exciting to me. I hope that turns into something that allows Matt Ryan to have this kind of comeback year, and because his numbers aren't diminished necessarily, it's just they don't look as clean and they're not producing wins.
It's not like 2016 when he had his MVP year, and of course we know the rest.
And the hope is Art Smith can be like Kyle Shanahan and put Matt Ryan, put the offense in the best position to get the most out of that. And then I don't know. Did they? Well, the defense was slowed down the Chiefs. They might have been the only team down the stretch that slowed down the Chiefs offense for real.
That's true. That's true.
So, I mean, other teams, the Dolphins, like had interceptions and they did some stuff, but that was the only game where I saw a team come in with man coverage. They blitzed a bit, but really just got 4 pass rushers into the backfield after Mahomes and did everything it took to do that. And Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs didn't score that much. So, Raheem Morris got them on the right track. The question is, I don't know if they are bringing him back as a coordinator. It would be a smart move if they're able to. Maybe he didn't do quite enough to earn himself as the interim head coach, which doesn't work very often. So it makes sense to go look elsewhere. But if they can keep what they were doing there, I assume Art Smith is smart enough to let Raheem Morris, okay, what you were doing, keep doing that. That makes a lot of sense. On offense, do what we need to do. You could get them back to where they were. They still have Matt Ryan, Julio Jones. It's all about the injuries. Will he be healthy? But they got a slew of other guys now, like Calvin Ridley doing amazing. Russell Gage, really good as that third receiver. When Julio Jones went down, there was always another guy up that was doing really good, getting stats. They just weren't necessarily winning games, although they did win a few down the stretch. I think if you put that all together, that is probably the hire that is like, okay, the most excited for. And it's mostly a love affair with Art Smith, but it's like, I think the pieces match, And if you're smart, you can treat Matt Ryan like he's Alex Smith. And you can start building a team around Matt Ryan that is able to win in spite of Matt Ryan's deficiencies. And in that time, as you're trying to get the right pick, wait for the right quarterback to come up in the draft over the next couple of years, if you find that guy and add him with Art Smith in charge, you can make a transition where it is like Patrick Mahomes got. He got to jump straight into a Ferrari. And as much as their winning is about Patrick Mahomes being this otherworldly talent, it without a doubt helped that Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce were his outlets. Yeah. That is so big. And if you are able to make that offense hum as you're bringing in that guy, give him a year to study under Matt Ryan, and then get him out there, that could be a huge, benefit to a Falcons team to be able to pick their spot. Not just, well, we got to tear this down, move on from Matt Ryan. Art Smith gives you the ability to do both. It's a longer rebuild, and you can win now. And that, we'll see if that plays out over the next couple of years. But that's what I imagine they're looking for with the Art Smith hire. Back to the trades. Anything for the Falcons or any other head coaching before we jump back into Goff and Stafford, and then we get to what I really want to talk about, Deshaun Watson wanting out of Houston?
No, not really. But to get back on, the trade with Goff and Stafford, I could see where you're coming from, Mac, where it's a win-win for both sides. But I don't know. When I look at this, I feel just because we know the history of the Lions, we know their past histories of making mistakes and mismanagement and just having constant turmoil and turnover in the owner, or not the owner, but the GM, the head coach, and the quarterbacks, and et cetera. I just feel this is a one-sided trade right now in favor of the Rams because they're the team right now that's in win-now mode. They've now got a better quarterback than Jared Goff. And now Stafford's going to be actually around a real head coach with a real system with playmakers and the ability and a better market too. Going to LA compared to Detroit, that's a win for the Rams and for Stafford there. And Jared Goff, I just don't buy into him. He's just not very good, and I don't know. But that's just me. But earlier you were talking about how it was a win-win for both sides, how it could be good for both teams. And I get that, but for me, I'm just going to stick with the fact that this is a one-sided deal in the advantage of the Rams.
So first is the idea that it's like, well, the Lions did it, so it's bad. Well, sure. Like, whatever the thing is. Then you're just assuming the Lions will never get good. And then does it matter what they're doing? Do we have to evaluate what it's like? Well, it's a curse. They can't do. They'll never get it right, so it doesn't matter.
Well, they're already past the 50-year mark when Bobby Lane said they wouldn't win when they traded to Pittsburgh in 1940.
Like that analysis doesn't mean anything though. Like it's like, what are the specifics of why the Lions are bad, and is what they're doing here bad? Because in this case, they took Matt Stafford, a quarterback who was really good for them, but never got him to the promised land. I blame it more on the Lions than on Matt Stafford, but Matt Stafford, he gets a prove-it year with the Rams. He gets to say whether it was more their fault than his that the Lions were never able to achieve more than they did while Matt Stafford was there. But when you're looking at the picks for a player that's getting into his 30s and you kind of have to rebuild, like you're talking a third-round pick in 2021, a first-round pick in 2022, first-round pick in 2023, and that, Goff doesn't have to be good for those to be good. Like Stafford for those picks is good, but you couldn't have gotten that. What you're getting it for is Jared Goff being bad and having a huge contract. And for the Lions, if you're in a rebuild, it makes sense to have a guy who sucks at quarterback but costs you a lot of money. Like that's not as big of a problem. It's a big problem for the Rams who are trying to win. They should have never paid him in the first place. It is not as big of a problem for the Lions right now. So the move gets them picks elsewhere. And I think, like I said, it builds in a timeline that otherwise teams get ahead of themselves, particularly when you talk about the Lions not being good. Hopefully they're smart. Brad Holmes was part of the Rams front office as they put together this team that made it to the Super Bowl with Jared Goff. So they had some smart guys in the room. If Brad Holmes learned anything, he can bring that to the Lions. I don't know how much of this was just the Rams looking at their former employee and like, I bet we can trick that guy. But in this case, I don't think it's a trick. I think, honestly, those picks are so huge. Like that obviously, if they make the wrong picks, if they do a bad job drafting, it will look bad. And you could say, well, it's the Lions. Of course they'll do bad. But any other team, any other good team with those picks, that is a huge steal. That is huge for a guy who wasn't winning you playoff games. So when I look at it, I can't judge it through the prism of the Lions. I'm judging it through the prism of the value. And the value is there. Now it's on Brad Holmes to say, it's not about a curse. It's not about the Lions being eternally bad. It's about previous people in Lions management that weren't good. I'm good. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to put this team together. So he made those picks for himself. He got a lot out of it. And yeah, they're the Lions. If we put bet on it, the bet is it's not going to work out for him. But I can't say that they got robbed on a trade. The trade, the value was there. It was good for both sides. It fit what both sides wanted to do. So I'm not going to trash the Lions for getting a lot of picks because the Rams were that desperate.
But hey, you know what? If the Browns can finally make it through and get out of their hiding cave and finally be good, I guess the Lions can too. So,
and the Browns did pretty much the same thing, except
they did.
Not a good sign for Brad Holmes because they made all the moves and then they got rid of Brad Holmes, or they got rid of what was it, Sashi Brown, or they were trying to go the Sam Hinkie route, and so he set him up for success. He didn't get to watch it happen though, so be careful is all I'm saying. I look at that trade and I see it good. I want to see what Stafford's able to do. I do think that's an upgrade for them, and I do think it's not going to make the Lions win now, but it is going to put them in a position to make moves going forward, and then it's on them to draft well. It's on them to build a team that works, and you can build a good team around a bad quarterback like Jared Goff, and it's basically just trade him out. Once the rest of the pieces are there and you've proven you've had a winning culture that just needs a quarterback, now you just start picking quarterbacks and hope you hit the jackpot. I think the big thing though is people were talking about this. If that's what Stafford is worth, what is Watson worth? Which I think is unfair. I think because it's like what would Watson be worth to the Rams in this situation? Ooh. And the Rams don't have they haven't made a first round draft pick since Jared Goff. So as much as that, it's already a stark number to look at from 2016 to 2023. No first round picks. It would be through 2027. You'd have to throw in a lot because the main thing that got those picks for the Lions was the fact that they were eating that salary from Jared Goff, and that was helping the Rams get out of a contract situation where they were in over their heads. If the Texans put themselves in that and gave you Deshaun Watson, who is a better quarterback and younger, it would have cost you the moon. So what is Deshaun Watson worth going to another team where he's not being swapped out for a monstrous contract for a below average quarterback? I think it's still close. I think that those draft picks, it's probably the same thing, but the Texans don't take on a Jared Goff type contract. I think it's pretty close to that for what it would take to get Deshaun Watson. It might take a little more.
Yeah, and for Deshaun Watson, I'm pulling for the guy to get out of there and get out of Houston. That place is so toxic, and my personal wish is get rid of Watson, get rid of Watt, decimate the franchise, kill it all, and then start over, get another expansion franchise in Houston, and then ask the Titans back for all the Oilers records and return to the name Oilers. That's my wish.
That's way too many steps, man. They should probably just stop hiring and enabling
the Patriot way,
like head coaches that aren't very good, and make them GMs. And
stop going the New England route and hiring people.
I don't even, I think the only problem with the New England GM hire is that clearly Deshaun Watson didn't like it. I think the idea of avoiding the Patriot way, that doesn't mean anything to me. We just watched Brian Flores be really good from the Patriot branch. Try to get guys who work. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. The problem is they hired a guy and apparently didn't get Deshaun Watson's blessing, and they needed his blessing on every decision. The moment that the DeAndre Watkins trade happened, ask Deshaun Watson what kind of coffee to put in the facility. Ask him everything. What brand of toilet paper should be in the bathroom stalls? Everything should go through Deshaun Watson after that, because you need to do everything you can to make him happy in Houston. And
he didn't.
One way to make him happy: don't trade off one of the best wide receivers in the NFL.
Right, but he didn't like the hiring of the GM because they had just fired a previous guy from the Patriot way, and Bill O'Brien.
Once again, like I said, if you went over it with Deshaun Watson and Deshaun Watson says it's okay, I'm okay with the hire being a former New England guy. So I'm disputing what I believe is your take, and I might be wrong. You might not be saying this, but I feel like you've said it a few times. The New England way, that idea, don't hire people because all of Bill Belichick's tree has failed. Not all of them. And the idea that just because it's another New England guy, the only reason it's a problem is because the most important person thinks it's a problem. If Deshaun Watson didn't think it's a problem, I don't think there's a good argument for don't do it because he's from New England. You need to hire whoever's the best guy. That happens to be one of the former New England guys, sure.
Yeah, but we'll see what happens. But again, for Watson's sake, I just hope it all works out for him for the best, because next to Mahomes and Rodgers, and I guess we'll still put Brady up there just because of what he's done this year. But next to those guys, Deshaun Watson is one of the elite quarterbacks in this league, and he does things that are just out of this world. And I've thought about it a few times. If he was under Reid's system in Kansas City instead of Mahomes, I think the Chiefs would probably be in the same position maybe that they are right now. But of course, I know Mahomes has a leg up in a lot of areas compared to Deshaun Watson, which makes Mahomes the best player in the league, in the game. But Deshaun Watson is really not that far behind because of what you see him do week in, week out. I mean, he takes a team that went 4-12, and he leads the league in passing yards. I mean, who's the last quarterback we could say that did that? It's insane.
There's probably a decent number of the passing yardage just simply from throwing in garbage time. I think the big thing with Deshaun Watson as we watched him, he was making legit throws. He was keeping them. They lost a lot of games that they were in, and they were in it entirely
thanks
because
to
of
him.
Deshaun Watson. So,
right.
That is where it's you got to do the eye test a little bit. It's there are ways the numbers can be deceiving. The context is Deshaun Watson had nothing, had it all taken away from him. lost even more of those pieces. What little he did have left were injured. The moment they think they have a running back with David Johnson rolling again, he gets COVID and he's out. Like, they could not stop the bad things happening, but Deshaun Watson kept fighting every second. And that's also why I think I don't think there was a lot of it, but there was a few people that were like, they didn't like Deshaun Watson being so forward and I don't want to be here. It was nowhere close to people were attacking James Harden for his I need to get out of Houston. But Deshaun Watson, I think we all understood why he needed to get out of Houston. So we got to listen. We got it. And, without a doubt, it makes sense that he puts his foot down and say, yeah, no, I can't. You can't waste my youth when clearly you don't know what you're doing. And I completely understand and appreciate that sentiment from Deshaun Watson. Any other NFL stuff before we move on to some basketball, both pro and college?
I think I'm ready to talk some college, talk about the KU blowout and the Big 12 SEC Challenge, which, of course, was won by the SEC for the second time ever.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about it. In fairness, it would have been if Texas Kentucky played, it would have been a tie. And yeah, the KU. How long do you want to talk about it? We talked about it a lot last week. I don't think anything has really changed for me.
We don't have to go that long if you don't want to. I mean,
well, no, I just mean I don't know what else I have to say because if we had a couple more, KU fans who were in disagreement with me, we 2 weeks in a row we had my friend Nick Springer, we had my friend Colin Wright, both who were like, I still think KU will get it together, and I'm like, well, they can get it together, but they have a long ways to go. There are some problems that need to be fixed, and it's for me where my thoughts were on where they were at, it hasn't changed. And once again, if they're going to fix it, it's something we're going to have to see over time. We're going to have to see something different happen. It's not like just snapping back into place. I looking at it, there wasn't anything that I could take away from that game other than the fact that that's way too many games in a row where KU just looks like they don't really have a good shot against a top 25 team. I think it's not so much that they're losing, it's that they're not in the game. And the closest being Baylor, they made a game for a second and then still lost by 8. But there are too many games where it is double digits, and their best efforts are to get it kind of under 10 for a second. And that's not good. That's a pretty bad sign, particularly when you're talking about postseason play, when you're not just all right, maybe we can't win the Big 12, but what can the team do down the stretch? I do wonder, though, if you stop looking at KU through the prism of greatness, of the Big 12 championship streak, the fact that under Bill Self, they've been no worse than a 3 or 4 seed in the NCAA tournament, the fact that they're just always this good. But when you're just looking at this team that is trying to find their way, how bad is the stretch of 4 losses in 5 games when 3 of those are road games in the Big 12, 2 of them against the best of the Big 12. When you have that, and then a Tennessee team that's a top 25 team, is that really a terrible stretch if KU does in fact win the games they're supposed to from here on out?
Well, if you had maybe more KU related fans on this podcast, it wouldn't surprise me if they'd be saying yes, it is, just because from KU standards, they're just not used to this.
You're a K-State fan. You understand suckiness. On the scale of suckiness, how bad is a 4 or 5 stretch? Not for KU, but for a Big 12 team that's out of the running for the top team, but is how do we find the right pieces? How do we work ourselves into a team that can hopefully make a tournament run of some kind? When you're looking at that, how, as a team that kind of sees, if you saw the team as, okay, they have things to fix, but they're not awful. They're not Kansas State. They're not Iowa State. They could do something. When you lose 3 of those games against top teams on the road, is that really this awful thing? It's only awful for KU who's just never experienced that, or at least not in a few decades.
I don't know. It probably just depends on who you have as your coach and who you've got as far as talent. But I'll probably say, I guess I'll say no. It's not the end all be all. It's not the end of the world. But boy, is it surprising to see this happen to Kansas. I mean, I know we're seeing, struggles from Duke, Kentucky, and I guess even North Carolina. I know they've been getting better recently. So, and there's another example. They were kind of on the down slope early in the year. Now they're kind of picking things back up a little bit. So maybe this could be the time for Kansas to kind of start picking the pieces back up and put back in place in order to make a deep, normal Kansas late season run, and then get in good shape for maybe Big 12 tournament. And I say maybe because there's talk about them not having conference tournaments due to COVID. And then, of course, the big dance, if we get to that situation, or if we get into that point too. And yeah, you mentioned about my Wildcats. It's pretty rocky right now in Manhattan, and I'm just praying for Weber to be shown the door. It's just it's not good.
So with KU, you said it depend on the coach. Well, we know they have Bill Self.
Right.
Depend on the pieces. So when you're looking at KU, what do you see? I mean, KU fans have a lot of opinions. Too many of them have the opinion that it'll all just work itself out in the end. But when you're looking at their biggest problems, what do you see as the thing that's keeping the KU from, forget being the top Big 12 team, but from, avoiding a stretch like they just went through?
Well, I think Dick Vitale on Saturday, broadcasting the game on ESPN, brought up a good point. And let's forget about the whole COVID thing, because I know that's brought down a lot of teams. So let's kind of push that aside for now. But
I'll bring it back up once you're done.
But no, Dickie V said that the whole college basketball scandal surrounding Kansas and other programs, but Kansas itself has kind of really kneecapped them. And as far as recruiting, it's hurt the recruiting for Bill Self in Kansas. And if you don't have that situation, if that's not going on, and then maybe the recruiting is still at the same high level that it has been under Bill Self. So I think that plays a factor into things. And I just thought Dickie V was a little spot on that.
Yeah, it's good that's my point, because I wasn't going from Dickie V saying it. I was going for Jeff Goodman, who's been fighting KU fans all year with his less talent because of violations. He said it back when they lost to Gonzaga, and even though they went off and just started kicking the crap.
That's playing Gonzaga though. Gonzaga's the best team in the country, and they're a scoring machine.
But the idea is, okay, less talent. Okay, so here's the thing. The idea that it's these teams with violations. There's also teams. You know who has violations? You know who, or at least were brought up and accused. In this case, Duke didn't even have violations. They just it's pretty obvious they did if the NCAA actually cared to look. Zion Williams. Those teams have the biggest turnover. They are teams going into a COVID year where you can't practice. You don't even know games are going to happen. Everything, the camaraderie, the way to build a team. You don't get to have the same moments of being together. And even when you do, it is, trapped in a dorm. It is not the same as it is also other years.
You don't have the environment at home games. I mean, the fans is what's also killing schools like Duke, Kentucky.
But here's the thing.
In KU.
I think if you don't have the fans, I don't think that drops, Kentucky down to being a team that can't make the tournament, Like, that's not the difference. Like, it's like, well, we don't have fans now, so all those talented guys just don't care enough, and other teams are better. Those other teams don't have fans at their home events right now, So that's where it's like we're on even playing field, And obviously, KU has more of a home advantage than other schools do, and they've lost that advantage. But that brings you down a tad. It doesn't make teams like, Duke and Kentucky fall off a cliff, I would say that the big thing is the turnover. They're teams that have relied on a lot of young talent. So Kentucky is constantly new freshmen. In this case, John Calipari is refusing to play some better players over the freshmen he promised spots. But those freshmen who normally we get to this time of the year and they're going gangbusters. They figured it out. Now they've figured nothing out to this point. And he's still like, well, I made him promises and I'm sure as hell not going to lose my 5-star recruit next year because I made this kid sit out when I promised him he could be there. He's going to make those top recruits happy so he can continue that system he started, that just rotation of the best recruits in the nation. Duke losing top players. And so it's like refill the cupboard. In KU's case, it was 2 huge players. Azubuike and Dotson were the drivers of the best team in the nation last year. And so when those guys are gone, and for your replacement for Azubuike is either David McCormick, who doesn't have it and at his best is still got some things to work on. Like he's made a huge leap in the last month and it's still not good enough to get them close to where they were at. And then you have Devon Dotson, who, a wicked fast point guard who made that offense just keep moving. Even when they weren't playing well, he kept them moving. He made fast break points happen. And this is where KU is their best, is at fast break. They're not getting nearly enough of those opportunities this year. Devon Dotson naturally made fast breaks because he ran a track speed with the ball in his hands and it didn't slow him down. Like he could dribble as fast as he could run without the ball.
He was crazy.
So when you lose that, now you don't even have a true point guard. You're fighting between, do we want Marcus Garrett, who's the better defender, or DeJuan Harris, who passes better, but also his stats only really show that he's actually just been a better defender. But we put both those guys on the court. We have 0 point guards that can shoot threes and no spacing. None of it works. And those are all things that Bill Self over the course of a year can slowly work out and get to be in shape, ready to go during Big 12 play. And they haven't had that this year. That calendar isn't there. So where other teams, it's like, well, why, if they all have the issues that COVID brings, why are these specific teams experiencing more issues? It's not these violations. I'll explain in a minute why those are not the reason. It's because those are the teams with the biggest turnover. So when you are trying to build that team, everybody else, it's similar to teams in the NFL. The ones that have, if you have Patrick Mahomes still throwing to Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, it's easier to run it back the next year, as opposed to teams that if you're coming in with a new set of guys and you're not getting practice time, although we saw it from the NFL, they eventually got practice time. They were not following enough of the rules to be as safe as they said they were. They were actually getting in some practices, but the right amount of practice. They might have been over practicing and they might have learned something there. But for college hoops, they've lost the timeline. They've lost the amount of practices. They've lost that rhythm that Bill Self has in getting teams ready to go. And if it was a year, like say this was the year that it was COVID shut everything down and it was Udoka and Dotson were the 2 guys leading the team, like last year's team had to go through the same situation, I think they fare much better, not just because they're better with those 2 better players, but because it's that team that's bringing it back. They have that chemistry together. They already know what they're capable of doing. They have established guys who are leading the team. And this year, it's a lot of pieces that some of them look pretty good. They just haven't figured out how to play together. And I think would have had a better shot. They wouldn't be on the same level as Gonzaga and Baylor and whatever, but they'd be pretty darn close if they actually had pieces that were the leaders. They have a bunch of good guys. Like Ochai's probably played the best for KU, and he probably had a better freshman year than he had a sophomore year. So he had to make a huge leap into being the leader of the team this year, None of those guys had time being that. None of the freshmen have really figured it out. Jalen Wilson had a slight run there. You're talking about recruiting, and this is why the recruiting side is nonsense. You have David McCormick was a high recruit that isn't doing anything for you. Bryce Thompson, broken finger, not playing, wasn't performing at a extremely high level before that anyways, although there was hope he could figure it out. There are so many players on this team that were high picks. In terms of their recruiting woes, it's like, when's the last time they lost this many games? It was like, well, not the 5 in a row. If it was 5 in a row, it would have been back to the 89 season. But the most recent one, 2014. Well, let's look at the last time they had recruiting woes. It was in the early 2010s after they won a national championship, and there was no recruiting scandal. There was nothing to drive it away. You go through ups and downs. You go through the flows. It depends on who's on the roster, who decides to go there. Occasionally you get crazy things like, I don't know, RJ Hampton decided to play in Australia for a year. There are things that happen that are outside of the recruiting violations that are the reasons you don't get better talent. But there's still a shit ton of talent on this team. The idea that that is the cause for KU to have a down year it's ridiculous. That's what I'm gonna say. So
that's fair.
I don't see that as the reason when they have as much talent as they do. And yes, there were probably guys they could have got if that scandal doesn't happen. There are, one, you don't have guys like, Billy Preston and Silvio De Sosa that, weren't playing on the team that could have been on the team. You can better evaluate where your holes are and what you need to fill when you do know that either Silvio's playing or Silvio's not on the team. When that decision has to be made in post because of a scandal like this, and you are trying to revamp a roster, you're trying to do damage control, you're trying to sue the NCAA. I think that those have an impact on how good you do in recruiting, but this wasn't even like a travesty of a recruiting year. Bill Self has had a few of these during his time here, and they didn't involve any off-the-court drama causing it. It literally is just how college recruiting works. Unless you do what John Calipari's doing, get 5 new 5-stars every year because you've become an NBA factory. And guess what? They're doing worse this year. They're doing worse than KU is. So if it's about talent, don't tell me it's about scandals when Kentucky got all the guys they wanted. And it didn't matter. They're awful. They're worse than those other teams that are struggling this year. So, yeah, Jeff Goodman, Dickie V, and sorry, Justin, I'm going to throw you in the camp too. Get that trash out of here, man. Not buying it for a second.
That's fair. All fair points. But you know what? In the back of my mind, I'm just a tiny thought in my mind. I'm still waiting for the Big 12 to be the Big 12 like normal, and just let KU right back in this thing. And it will be classic Big 12 like if KU somehow –
There's not enough games, man. I mean,
even not. If they finish like third or second, like that would be –
and that's a good run, and it's possible, but it's still unlikely. But,
it's the Big 12, though. It's the Big 12.
Winning, it's impossible. It's pretty close. It's not statistically impossible, but it's getting there. The thing is, looking at the rest of the Big 12, what's scary is, you have something like OU where a couple, split between
Was there not a better team this week than Oklahoma? I mean, what a week. You beat Kansas, then you go beat Texas on the road, then you go beat Alabama, who was number 9. And I know it's Alabama basketball is not like Alabama football, but come on.
I mean, they're number 9 this year. Right. And so that's the question. They came in number 24. Are the Sooners severely overrated? Is this just kind of like they did so much in 1 week that got them higher? But I think even looking at their resume before that, it's like, okay, they might have been a little underranked before they ran this awesome week and got themselves where, I mean, they're definitely in the top 10 discussion now. And that's a huge jump going into this week. I don't know where they'll actually jump to, but in the bracketology, and this is not attacking, is it Chad Ford who does the bracketology ESPN?
It's Joe
Larinardi.
Yeah, it was on the tip of my tongue. I just couldn't get it out.
So I think Chad Ford is NBA. Joe Larinardi's bracketology had him a 6th seed. So that's got to change
like
going into this week.
They're like a 3.
I think they were a 6 on the one I looked at. I'm pretty sure when I looked yesterday.
Let's see. Did the rankings come out here today?
I would assume so.
Yes, Oklahoma is number 9. This is the AP Top 25.
Well, they're number 9, but I think they were a 6th seed in the bracketology.
That's wrong.
It's crazy.
They need to be a 3 at least.
Which the question is, did they play themselves into a 3, or was it way off to have them at a 6 in the first place?
I think. Now, I had to go back and look at OU's schedule early in the year, which, of course, I know it was pretty softened down compared to now because they're playing better teams now. They're playing mostly conference, affiliated teams. I hate to kind of be a little disrespectful Well, actually, I don't know if this will be disrespectful, but I'll just say that they played themselves. Sorry, what was your how did you phrase your question again?
I don't know. I just make stuff up on the fly. Did they play themselves into a 3 seed, or were they severely underappreciated, underranked at the 6 seed? Was the 6 seed ever accurate?
I think they played themselves in just by getting these victories, by earning them, by playing better down the stretch here. And again, I have to go look at the schedule for OU early in the year, but boy, again, this stretch they had this past weekend, really not just this week, but maybe the last couple weeks has just been incredible. And yes, KU's down a little bit, but you beat KU. And it wasn't in Lawrence, but it was in Norman. You go beat Texas, a top 5 Longhorns team, yes, without Shaka Smart, their head coach, and they were down a few players. So that alone may not be as impressive, but hey, they were number 5 in the country at the time, and it's on the road. I mean, that's always impressive when you win on the road against a AP top 5 team. And then you go beat, yes, again, it's not Alabama football, but they were number 9 in the nation. I mean, that's impressive. So I think Oklahoma has played themselves into this situation. And I'm currently looking at the rankings here. KU is now 23rd. Yikes.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, once again, like part of it is maybe Tennessee was a little underappreciated at their 18 spot. But also, yeah, you just can't get stomped like that.
And now Alabama just dropped 1 spot. Now they're 10th.
Yeah. That's fair. That's fine. Yeah, I think for me, I would probably agree that the big thing is Oklahoma is 2-3 on the road this year. So at this point, 9-1 at home, to be 6-3 in the Big 12 is a good spot to be in, but it's also home game loaded. And so as you start to get down the stretch, okay, what happens as you have to finish off these road games? And in the Big 12, it's not just about getting good wins. It's about getting those good wins on the road. Bill Self always talks about it. It's, basically assume that you're going to win home games and you're going to, lose road games, and every road game you steal. That's the only way to build a win in the Big 12 is how many road games have you won? So if that's the truth, then, OU 2-3 plus they've lost one of the home games, but not in Big 12 play. So right now they are, 2 games up, Baylor's 5 games up. So they're running away with it a little bit. But KU's 2-4, not good. West Virginia 3-2 on the road. I'm not sure how many of these are actually Big 12. These are just season-long rankings. But when you have that, schedule like that, it's good. They've done really well, and I do think they should be where they are. But once we're trying to figure out how good they actually are, it's will you do the same during these road games coming up? And if they're able to pull that off, without a doubt, we were probably wrong about where they were in terms of definitely being a 6 seed. I think I'm not good at math, but it just seems very confusing to me that they were ever a 6 seed. They should have been a little bit higher than that. But we'll see what happens, down the stretch here. And I honestly, I need to watch the Sooners a little bit more. I only got to watch them against KU, and then I got to watch a little bit of the Alabama game. But the pieces are there, so it all becomes: do you finish? Do you win on the road? We'll see when they do that, and they're just nudging their way up there to Texas. So, exciting for the Sooners. Any other big takeaways from the SEC Big 12 Challenge?
Well, I was just going to say a little more about Oklahoma. I was going to actually point out some of their quote road games here remaining, because I know that's the one thing we're talking about right now is how they are on the road. Of course, tonight they've got the big game on Big Monday against Tech. That's at 8:00. Tech is right now currently a 7-point favorite. I think Tech wins that game, but hey, Oklahoma's hot right now, so I think they got a chance in that one. And then, of course, this is not a road game, but they do face number 2 Baylor at home. That's on February 10th. They go on the road to Morgantown on the 13th. That's going to always be a tough matchup facing Huggy Bear in West Virginia. Then they got the rematch with Texas at home. That'll be interesting. Now, in normal years, we could say that going to Ames, Iowa is always tough, but Iowa State is just so bad this year. And they've been hit by COVID as well, too. But I think they've just been falling completely off the map ever since Steve Prohm took over. I mean, they were really good, of course, obviously, when Prohm had some of the leftovers from Fred Hoiberg. And it's just gone downhill ever since with Iowa State under the watch of Prohm. Going on the road to K-State, that's nothing. That'll be a blowout. I have no faith in Weber's Wildcats in that one. Then you got Bedlam, the last two. In fact, I think it's a 2-game stretch against them in 3 days, which will be interesting. So you got first in Stillwater, which will always be interesting. And then, of course, you wrap up with the rematch in Norman. So interesting to look forward to and watch Oklahoma. See if they can keep it going or if they're going to kind of let up a little bit. And I think they will let up just a little bit, but I would really call this a overrated team. I just want to give or be one of the few to actually give credit to Lon Kruger because I think he never gets any credit. I mean, the guy's had a pretty good coaching career. He's the only coach to take 5 different schools to the Big Dance, which is incredible. And Oklahoma's got some good players. They got some good pieces on that team. They can score. And actually, for the first time in a couple of years under Kruger's watch, they can play defense. So I'm actually more impressed with Oklahoma, especially currently compared to maybe other naysayers.
Yeah, they've been impressive. Like you said, Texas Tech, next game up, West Virginia a little bit, and then, Baylor, they get to take them at home, but it's going to be hard to get the victory there. So I don't blame them. I don't even blame them if they lose that one as a home game. But if they can steal some road games against some good teams here early, they have some very bad teams they have to face on the road late. Before they close out with 2, 1-1 with Oklahoma State. So they can really move themselves up and get themselves in a good position for a really good seed in the tournament. So we'll see how that one plays out. So you said I was trying to look at the other games if any of them matter. I think the big one for me is number 12 Missouri holds on against TCU 102-98. Isn't that basically a loss? Didn't the Tigers basically lose that game?
Well, I didn't watch the entire game because I was watching.
Well, I told you the final score was they beat TCU by 4, which is just a loss. That's a loss. Yeah, if you're number 12 in the country and you beat TCU by only 4, like you had to squeak it out, you lost.
You know what? I gotta be fair and honest with TCU under Jamie Dixon. I've been actually disappointed with his tenure there. I thought that was a huge hire when they got him from Pitt. I thought he was going to make TCU into something pretty respectable because for a long time they've just been a dumpster fire in the Mountain West or Conference USA or whatever they've been before the Big 12. TCU teams under him have just been massively disappointing. I mean, they made that tournament one year and they had that they had that point guard that transfer. I forget his name. He was kind of an awkward looking dude anyway, but. Yeah, you're right. That is a loss for Missouri just because you're a ranked team first of all.
Yeah.
I guess you do have the better players. Coaching wise, I think no. I think that goes to Dixon just because of what he's accomplished compared to Missouri's coach, Kwanzaa Martin. There we go. I was blanking on his name there for a minute. But yeah, bad weekend for the Big 12. They should have won the challenge. I mean, the fact that you He only had lost it one other time in the entire brief history of this deal, and now you lose it for a second time. I don't know. Big 12 is a better conference in the SEC, obviously because Kentucky's down this year. I thought overall it was just a bad weekend.
Well, but they didn't get the chance to steal that win from Kentucky. So, like, the idea that Kentucky being down helped.
That's unfortunate.
I mean, for me, it's, I can't say a negative thing for the Big 12. Obviously, for KU, like, I didn't like them getting stomped by Tennessee. But OU gets the win over Alabama, which, like we said, probably should have been a closer ranking for the two. But, OU getting a pretty big upset there based on that ranking that they did have. Texas Tech gets a decent win against LSU. Florida knocks off West Virginia, which, you could argue Florida is probably
that's not surprising.
Undervalued. That should be a top 25 team, and West Virginia should have been ranked a little bit lower than 11 to begin with.
That wasn't a surprising loss. West Virginia has a hard time closing out games just because of their nature of their play.
A&M beats Kansas State. I don't think anybody was hoping you might hope Kansas State wins, but you didn't expect them to win anything. OSU beats Arkansas, and then the finale, the flip, if it's not already KU losing when they just generally don't lose these games. Mississippi State crushes Iowa State. I don't think it was set up in a way that, like, I have to be like, well, how'd the Big 12 lose this one? It's like, well, yeah, SEC is a bigger conference, even when Big 12 is better, top to bottom. They don't have
it would be nice.
As many good teams like to pick from, to be like, we're only going to put the best. Big 12 has those bottom teams. We knew K-State was going to lose. We knew Iowa State was going to lose. You're already 2 down, man. KU loses because they're not good this year. They're not ready to face the top team. And then, you go the rest. If, like, they win if TCU knocks off Missouri like it looked like was going to happen. I think looking at that, I'm not, my opinion did not change at the Big 12 based on not beating the SEC in this challenge.
That's fair. And I would like to see the Big 12 at some point be even as far as schools like the SEC is, to where you can actually include South Carolina and Vanderbilt or whoever gets left out of the circle of the challenge every year, and you have everybody play each other when this thing happens once a year, instead of just having you have 10 versus 10 and you got 2 left out. It's weird.
It's also what upsets me when they point to the Big 12 not being as good as the Big 10, and you do know that the names are deceiving, and that the Big 12 has 10 teams and the Big 10 has 14, 15. So when they have one more team in the tournament, it's that's a lower percentage. They have more crappy teams in the Big 10.
This is so laughable because look at how bad Michigan State is right now. And normally they're at the top of the crop in the Big 10. And Iowa was supposed to be the darling in the pick of the Big 10 this year, and they've already got 4 losses already. I mean, I don't know where they fell in the rankings. I'm going to see that real quick here. I've got it right here. Let's see. Iowa is at number 8. I mean, seriously. And they were picked to win the Big 10. They were a preseason top 4 team. And they've got 4 losses already.
Yeah, I just think that it's completely overblown that Big 10 is better than the Big 12.
And Ohio State is number 7. And they were unranked beginning of the year, I believe. I mean, this is insane, man.
Yeah, I don't buy into most of that crap, but it should be interesting to see how these teams finish out the year. I think that's all we have. We went a little too long, so we won't do the NBA talk. We'll save that one for next time, which once again, that's what we do half the time. I promise, once NFL is over, we'll obviously have more time to talk about everything else. I'll be searching for topics, so I will find anything to talk about in the NBA. We could talk about golf. There was an exciting golf thing, but once again, we had more important topics, so put a pin in that. I don't think there'll be too many opportunities to talk about golf, but we'll find some stuff. And you know what? If you're watching and you think we missed a topic that you want to talk about, send us topics. Send us information. You can go on to our Facebook page, onto YouTube, leave a comment, tell us the things you want us to talk about. You can send me a message. If you want to send me an email, I'm at macmorenews@gmail.com. Send me your topic ideas. We can do it like a mailbag if you want to, but we'll get around to whatever you guys want. Until then, it's just going to be randomly typing things into a rundown, and then Justin coming on so we can argue about it, and I can say that his agreement with Dickie V and Jeff Goodman is ridiculous. It's trash, man.
Are you serious? Are you serious?
You're getting better at your impersonations. You've had a few bad ones early on, but slowly, but I think you've refined it. You decided to only go with the ones you're really good at. So that's all we have for this episode of Too Many Points on the Tell Me More podcast. We're hoping to be back on Thursday. I'm not going to promise it this time because we failed a few too many times, but that's the plan. Thanks for tuning in. Later, folks.